Hey, my name's Tim Buell, and today we're going to be breaking down a full song mix. And let's get into the vocals. First thing is this Clarity VX. Without it,
stay strong, be brave.
There are a lot of drums in that mic. And then with it, this song is called Polaris. It's by Remedy Drive. My good friend David Zock is the frontman of that band. And recently I had David and a couple of my favorite musicians in Nashville come over to my studio for kind of like the grand opening of my studio. It was the first session that I got to record in this studio. And this session came up because Samply, a company I've worked with before, they make a cool software that kind of allows you to share mixes with people and get revisions and notes and stuff like that. They reached out and said, hey, we want to go to studios in Nashville, check out what people are doing, their workflow and stuff. And I said, how about we not just check out the workflow, but we record a full song? So that's what we did.
Speaking of Samply, I forgot to mention this when I was recording the video, but you can actually download the stems for this entire project for free in the description below. You can go there, type in your email, and then it redirects to a Samply project. You can download those stems totally for free. So go do that.
So this is the song that we did. Again, this was all one take, and this was all cut live, everybody in the same room. So vocals and drums were actually in the same room. Here's a preview of kind of the final thing, and you can watch the full performance video over on Samply's YouTube channel when you're done with this video.
Fire is burning, it's not burning out, burning out.
All right, so if we hop into Pro Tools here, let me just give you a quick rundown of how things are laid out. As you can see, this is the whole song. All these tracks in red here are drums. Live full drum kit. All of this stuff down here is little samples and programming to reinforce the drums. We'll get into that later. And then the instrumentation we had bass, violin, guitar. I added a little pad to reinforce some stuff. We had a CP70, it's a Yamaha. It's like a baby grand piano that's electronic. Actually has strings in it and everything, but yeah, it's a really cool thing. David loves playing on it. Live shows, he like jumps off of it and stuff. And then we have the vocals. And then up here we have all the stuff that are not drums go to this track bus. All the stuff that are drums go to the drum bus, and then we have some different reverbs and stuff like that. Let's take a listen to kind of a little bit about this song and kind of get into it.
We won't stand by, we are steadfast, you see. Got open eyes, as wide as catastrophe.
That's a little bit of the verse. We'll go to the chorus. And then toward the end of the song, there's a whole violin solo. So that's kind of the gist of the song. All these little chops, other than the vocal, all these little chops you see are actually me automating the volume. I like to do that with the clip gain instead of ride volume faders. But okay, so on my 2 bus, none of this processing stayed for the master that gets released to Spotify and on the YouTube, the performance video on Samply's channel. All of this stuff I took off and someone mastered it. I'll put the name of the person here because I forgot, but they did a great job. It sounds awesome. But for me, while I'm mixing, I always like to mix into processing because I find, like, especially limiting, so I find if I don't mix into a limiter, like, things just get really weird. So even if I end up taking this limiter off and sending it to mastering, like I leave it off. I'm pretty new to this. Like, I've never considered myself a mix engineer, but I'm getting into it more and more. And this is the first like full scale, wide release production that I'm doing where like I mixed it and it got mastered, and you know, so it's kind of fun. So on the 2 mix, we have a little bit of compression. We have a little bit of tape saturation. We have this fresh air thing that's just doing a little bit of mid and high end boosting. A little more air, 10K like air added. Multi-band compression, just a little bit. Then this kind of magic plugin by Masterdesk. This thing is awesome. I don't understand really how it works, but it's great. And then a little bit of limiting. And again, all of these, this looks like a lot on the 2 mix, but like all of these are just doing a tiny bit. 2 dB of this, 3 dB of that, 1 dB of this. So that's kind of the 2 mix. Moving on to the other buses, we got the track, just, you know, everything, again, like vocals, violin, bass, guitar, all that stuff just goes into this little compressor guy. And then a little tape machine. Drums are similar. Compressor, channel strip with a little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ, and then a, you know, tape machine. So let's listen to everything by itself. So we got the we have the vocals here.
Stand by. We are steadfast, you see.
And you can hear, we recorded this live in the room together. You can hear drums bleeding a good amount. And we'll get back into how I processed it and stuff like that. You have David's piano.
We won't stand by.
You got some guitar. Sounds awesome. And it looks like there's nothing on that, but in reality, what I had on that guitar, a little bit of this RX10 guitar denoise, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, and a little bit of transient design that I automated on and off for like the more plucky parts because he had reverb going and it was just a little too swimmy. So I used that to like have it cut through a little bit. And then for the violin, so you have two things of the violin. You have this mic, and it was a little pencil condenser, a Neumann, like I think KM 184, I think. And again, there's a little bit of reverb on that. Again, this violin, I actually sent it to the violin player because he wanted to tune it a little bit, which we did tune a tiny bit. And he also wanted to process it the way that he likes to. And I said, hey, that'll make my life easier. Because it was, you know, this was a quick project we did. And also it was really hard to get this violin mic, and the violin DI, which we also captured, just sounded kind of weird. Like the violin DI sounded a little too violin DI, but the violin mic sounded a little too, you can hear all the drums in it. Any instance we could use the mic, like when drums weren't playing, we used the violin mic, but there were a lot of instances where we used the DI, and we just kind of had to blend them and kind of duck around kind of the, you know, we just kind of had to make it work. And then we have bass. And that's a cool bass sound. We'll get into how we did that in a second. And then we have drums. And let's see, drums sound a little bit like this by themselves. And again, you can hear David singing, and I think in these room mics. Like in that room mic for the drums, you're hearing violin, you're hearing singing, you're hearing everything. And then down here, all we have are a little bit of like, at the downbeat of the choruses, because I was trying to play cymbals super, super quiet. I wasn't laying into the crashes, and I felt like the downbeat of the chorus needed a little bit. But again, my mindset when we were all in the same room was, I don't want to play so loud that the vocal take gets ruined, because that's the most important part. So if I have to play a little quieter and then after the fact we have to fly in some stuff to make it hit harder, that's fine. But I don't want to ruin the song by ruining the vocals, because if the vocals are ruined, no one will care how my drums sound. So at the very beginning of the, you know, choruses, I added like a crash cymbal and a stomp, which which sound a little goofy on their own, but going into the chorus,
You hear the sound of the exodus. Run wild against the tide.
it's pretty subtle, but the thing I'm learning more and more as I get, more into mixing, more into recording, is like a lot of times it's just the extra 2 to 5 to 7% that'll make the difference. But when you try to make that 2 to 5% the like 20%, that's when people, start to go, So with something like this, adding like some reinforcement on the downbeat, I would rather have it go unnoticed to the normal ear, but when I take it away, you go, okay, than like have it land on the downbeat and someone go like, what was that sample they just flew in? Like, you don't want that. So the drums, a lot of mics on the drum kit. We have a kick in, which is a Beta 52. We have a sub kick, which is this like, speaker with the reversed speaker wire thing going on. The snare top is a 57. The snare crunch is like really blown up at the preamp, and it is a Rode NT5. Snare bottom is an SM81. The tom mics at this point, I think, were Mic Tech PM10s. Hi-hat mic is a SE8. The overheads were KM184s at this point, I believe. This Draper mic is this weird room mic that I have that is an SM81 faced away from the drum kit and then blown up through a preamp, blown up through an outboard compressor. And then these rooms are a stereo Cascade X15 ribbon mic. So those are the mics. Let's go through them here.
You use your
Kick drum definitely has a little bit of a gate going on. And, it's just kind of a channel strip with some gate and some compression and a little bit of EQ. And then a little more EQ stuff. And then that blends in with the sub kick. And the sub kick has similar stuff going on, just a little bit of compression and EQ. And then both of them go to this kicks bus, which takes both of them and adds this harmonic distortion saturation thing. The low end is getting boosted a little, and then it's really distorting the high end. This is multi-band saturation and distortion. Without this, it just doesn't hit as hard, and it doesn't have the same like punch. And then a little bit of EQ after that. So those are the kick mics. Let's go to snare mics. This is the 81 on top. Just kind of giving lots of low-end impact, a little bit of compression. This has a gate on it. And then a big boost for the like low-end impact of the drum without this. And then I blend that with the snare crunch mic, which is all the brightness and presence of the drum. Getting gated, and then similar, just a little bit of compression EQ. And then the snare bottom. I don't even really think that's in the blend too much. And then the three of them, similar to kick, they go to a snare bus that does the same multi-band saturation distortion thing and a little bit more EQ. This is the three mics together. So the gating I'm doing on these, I'm not totally cutting them off. I'm just making sure that those kicks that are sneaking through those mics aren't becoming like part of the kick sound. I'm ducking them just enough to get them out of the way. But not ducking them so much that you get that weird, like super gated, lame thing that doesn't sound good. And then toms. Okay, so toms on the both the toms, the processing is pretty much exactly the same. The EQ points are just a little different. Little bit of compression, like literally like 1 dB of compression. And that's just to level out like some of the loudest parts of it. The EQ, just a little bit of EQ. Here, boosting like the fundamental, boosting the, kind of where I like the attack, and then doing this whole Saturn multi-band saturation distortion, where I'm tightening up the low end a little bit with this threshold and boosting a little of the low end, and then like boosting a ton of high end. And then you can see on these tracks here for the toms, I've cut out all the instances where the toms aren't playing. Everybody was in the same room, and any mic that was open was either adding to the coolness of the song or taking away from it. There was no mic that was neutral. It was either helping or hurting, and these tom mics I just didn't feel were helping, having the ringing and the ambient noise that is there when you're not playing toms. So those by themselves sound something like this. And they sound like, I think they sound cool in the mix. Oh, and I should say the snare drum was covered with cloth, and then the toms were also covered with cloth. Again, there's vocals in the room with me. There's a violin mic that's opened in the room with me. I did not want that cutting through and like ruining those mics. So those are the toms. Hi-hat mics, pretty standard. Overheads, here's what the overheads sounded like. Again, these were KM184s. And that's adding, I mean, that is the sound of the drum kit as far as the high end and the stereo image of it and everything. And again, a little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ, a little more EQ, just kind of mostly taking care of like the low end kind of being too present in those mics. I don't need that because all the close mics have it. This little thing here is a move that just kind of deharshes some of the louder cymbal hits, and it is triggered by a threshold. So this only kicks in when it reaches a certain threshold. A little bit of saturation, and then, ooh, okay, I took out more rumbly stuff. I just didn't need any of this low end stuff. Like without these two EQ moves, like I just essentially turned the overheads in from like a total image of the kit to like just a high-end presence of the kit because I just didn't need all that low end. Okay, this cool room mic. Again, this has just a little bit of compression. This is getting destroyed at the preamp and the compressor that's going on the outboard gear, and then I'm doing it even more. But I think this mic sounds really cool. It's a cool sounding mic. It doesn't always work, but it sounds awesome. And then the room mics. And room mics have a similar thing up here. This is for taking care of like the harsh cymbals. I have a lot of that cymbal stuff from the overheads, so I don't need the room mics to be very bright. I want them to add like length and attitude to the drums, but I don't want them to add harshness. So those are the drums. Let's go to bass. The bass was DI. Seth Bolte played bass. He's a great bass player. And going on in this is, let's see, with bass, just a little bit of EQ, kind of controlling. Actually, that's not even on. So just right here around 150, just scooping out some stuff that was a little out of control down there. A little bit of compression, multi-band saturation, distortion. And this is really cool. Like this plugin is what allows like bass to get heard on a phone, because in this like 450 and above, I'm like really distorting it, really adding some mid-range so that you can hear this bass on a phone. A little more distortion, saturation, and then just, what am I doing here? Adding a little bit of real subby low-end stuff to give the bass a little more weight. So here's what we recorded. I mean, it sounds awesome. That's a cool sound, but it doesn't really cut through in the mix. So a little bit of EQ and compression. That first instance of saturation. Second instance of saturation. And then that's that super subby low end. So the raw signal was cool. I just added a little more grit and like bite to it so that, you know, again, it could translate on on stuff. So for the violin stuff, I'm not going to go too into this because Sean did a lot of the guy that Sean Williams, great producer that I work with a ton. He did a lot of the processing. And so honestly, I don't know what he did, but I do know that on there's another song that we recorded live with the same band, the same setup, which I'll also post a mixed deconstruction there. I use the DI mic a lot, and that's got a lot of tricks. So stay tuned for that because I'll get way more into mixing the violin in that video. For the guitar, what I did with the guitar is guitar denoise, this RX plugin, if you record an instance of the guitar. So the guitar amp was in another room of my house, and that's why you don't hear the guitar amp bleeding into everything. So this is vital because every guitar amp is noisy, and this you can just hit learn. It learns the noise, like in a space where the guitar player's not playing at all. It learns the noise and it just like takes it away. It's awesome. Taking care of a little bit of low end and managing some of the like spikier parts of up top, little compression. And then again, I automated on, let's see. No, I didn't automate. I just left this on because he had a lot of reverb on, and that transient designer, for whatever reason, seemed to take care of it. So the guitar ended up sounding like this. Very, very cool. I added a pad because it was a small band. I just felt a little bit like there was just this kind of empty void that I felt like, especially at the beginning of the song, there was just a lot of empty harmonic space. So I used this little synth plugin that comes with Pro Tools, did a little EQ, put a little lo-fi on it, put a little delay on it, put a little saturation on it. I did a lot actually to it. So this is what the pad sounds like. That's what it sounds like originally. That's what I did to it. And let's hear without and with this.
Stand by. We are steadfast, you see.
Now with.
Got open eyes, as wide as.
You can't really hear it there. I think what I did, I think you'll hear it more in the intro. Yeah, in the intro, it just lacked a little, it needed something constant to hook everything together since everybody's kind of playing sparse there. So that's what it's there for. And you can see I automated the volume to peak up in certain places and whatever. So David's piano. So David's piano was a whole saga. Because, you know, like I said, it's a CP70, it's a Yamaha thing. It looks really cool and it does sound, it has a unique sound, but it's a real piano. It's got real strings in it and you have to tune it. And David's was not in tune. So we ended up, I soloed out his performance, sent it to him, and he retracked his piano because it was too out of tune. We wanted these to sound raw and live and like a couple people in a room making music, but we didn't want it to be that out of tune. So David retracked his plugins that he used. I believe he used, there's this company called Night Fox Audio, which is actually David's brother. Really, really cool plugins. Definitely check them out. He recorded a sample of a CP70, which is cool. So like, this sounds pretty close to his original performance. It's just actually in tune, which is nice. And this is how it sounded without anything to it. And then I did a little EQ, I did a little compression, I did a little tape, I did a little more saturation distortion stuff. I did this time adjuster thing, and then I did a final EQ. I'll leave the time adjuster thing off because that's something I want to talk about. But here's how it sounded after I added everything I added. A lot of what I did was kind of try to control, like, to me, that sample, it had a lot of like low mid stuff and like the peaks of the dun, 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 like the spikiest transient, like everything just kind of felt out of balance. So a lot of the moves I did just kind of like tried to force all the frequencies into a more, because too much low end is just going to make it disappear in the mix and also clutter things up in the mix. And then I added this time adjuster thing. Basically, I delayed one channel by 20 samples, and it makes it just sound wider. So here it is without that. And here it is with it. It just widens it out and leaves space for stuff. The other thing that's adding a lot of vibe is I have some feedback on this tape machine. It's really, really cool. Here's without the tape. So without all this stuff in the mix, the piano just kind of disappears into Muddyville. It's like loud without really being prominent or something. It just didn't sit right. So that's that. And then let's get into the vocals. Let's get a spot where David's singing a good bit. And vocals, there's a lot going on here. First thing is this Clarity VX. This is a plugin that Waves makes that basically it isolates vocals from any background noise. So I have this going at like 23%, and without it,
We're guided by the fires on the North Star. Stay strong, be brave. Ripples turn to.
there are a lot of drums in that mic. And then with it,
We're guided by the fires on the North Star. Stay strong, be brave. Ripples turn to tidal waves, don't you know?
and David was singing into a Neumann, some kind of handheld Neumann deal. And it sounded great on his voice. So this thing does introduce some artifacts, but so I didn't crank it all the way to only isolate the vocals because that'll sound really, really weird. But I just wanted to tame the drums in that mic a little bit. And that plugin is awesome. It just kind of does that very well. And then from there, a channel strip that has a little bit of saturation, a little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ. Okay. And then here, these are all just dynamic EQ moves. So these EQ moves only happen when he's singing it above a certain threshold. And it's just to kind of take care of some of the boom and the like mud that gets introduced. And then here's another channel strip that's also doing a few tiny EQ moves and a little bit of compression. And then here's a de-esser. And at the very end, there is a multi-band EQ. So without all of this stuff on here,
We're guided by the fires on the North Star. Stay strong, be brave. Ripples turn to tidal waves, don't you know? We're guided by the fires on the North Star. Stay strong, be brave. Ripples turn to tidal waves, don't you?
with vocals, the thing that I'm trying to do is, each instance of whatever I put on there, just doing a little bit. So because with de-essing, you have your T's and your S's and those pop out a bunch. And what you don't want to do is try to take care of it with one compressor. So you have this compressor going in that's just kind of a general compression. And then you have on this channel strip, you have another round of compression that's, going to tame the vocals at certain spots a little bit more. And then you have a de-esser, which is going to tame and de-ess a little bit. But then you also have this multi-band EQ, which is also going to de-ess and tame stuff a little bit. And I'm just trying to take care of the S's and the T's and the loudest parts without just like clamping down with one compressor, because that's just not going to sound good. And you can also see on the vocals, I've edited out any instance where he wasn't singing because his mic was open and, it wasn't a terribly awesome sounding room mic. So we just got rid of it. I think that's pretty much everything. The other thing that I did is a little production trick. Again, we wanted this to feel like organic, and at some point I had like a swell in here to go down to the final chorus.
On the hillside.
It was like a reverse cymbal swell type thing, and David came back and said, hey, I want this to feel a little more organic, but I just felt like it needed something there. So what I did is I took his piano, clipped out this chord that is leading into the final chorus, and I just reversed it. So I gave it this little thing. And I think that really helps kind of bring in that final downbeat to the chorus.
Fire on the hillside.
Again, it's a small thing. It's small, but I think it's significant. So that's the song. That's like all the stuff that I did. Super fun song to work on. Everybody played so great, and it was really fun to break in the studio tracking a song with 5 people in the same room. So go check out the full song on Samply's YouTube channel or stream it on Spotify. If you like this video, I'd love if you could give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be doing more of this stuff. I have one more song from this session that I'm going to do. So if you want a full mix deconstruction like this again, we're going to get more into kind of like some moody, different, weird effect type stuff, more into kind of how to mess with a violin DI and make it sound normal and not terrible. So that's coming out soon. Stay tuned, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.